you really did that. What were some lessons you've learned, and what do you know today that could help someone who's trying to raise capital to do it more effectively?
Yes. So the very first business that I sold to Lotus, I didn't have any venture capital. I raised $150,000 to go to Comdex from customers of my stereo store. I took 10 doctors and dentists, and for $15,000 each, I gave them 1% royalty.
Wow.
That was the only way I could raise the money. I didn't know it. I didn't even know what equity was, so I certainly didn't know how to do that. I didn't think anybody would give me equity, because why would they give me equity? How am I going to do anything with that?
Right.
But I thought selling them a royalty, maybe that would work, so I scrambled together $150,000. That paid my way to go to CS. Then when we did sell the company, I converted that royalty to equity, and they got their stake back.
Right.
For Knowledge Venture, I put in some of the first money myself, and then I did raise venture capital the first time. I raised money from a firm called Moore Davidow in Silicon Valley. I raised $2.5 million. And I pitched to everybody, and I went up and down trying to tell everybody my story, but they really believed in me, and they really saw my passion for it. I think it was the passion that got them over the edge. I don't think it was my business plan. I think it was they saw I was going to go through brick walls if necessary to make this thing happen.
They were bidding on you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think showing that is very important to investors, and then finding someone that you could work with, that you get along with. So John Fiber was a particular partner there. I loved him. He was on my board, and we worked together really, really well for many, many years. So now, advice for fundraising. Well, there's many, many more options now. My particular advice is raise smaller amounts, easier, make progress, and use that as a stepping stone to raise bigger amounts. So even on that company, Energy Vault, which I think is going to be one of our knockout successes, and we even raised a big round of capital that we'll be announcing next week to help scale that company. But at the beginning, I put in the first $250,000. We raised, I think, $750 at like $2.5 million valuation. Just a small amount of low valuation, because it was still a crazy idea. I mean, we had the physics proven, but we had not built anything yet. We used that $750,000 to buy a used crane and build a small prototype. With that, we raised $1.5 million at a $10 million valuation, just 6 months later, but we used that as a stepping stone. Then when we had the money to order the parts for the first system, we then raised $2 million at $20 million valuation. Then with that, we raised $4.5 million at $50 million valuation. And then we just raised the monster round recently after we have orders. But all that happened in the span of 2 years, but I raised sort of what I needed to show a very demonstrable thing at the next stage. So I really, really think that trying to raise as much as you need forever is really, really hard, because people might not believe in it yet, but try and find the thing that is the obstacle they don't believe in, and prove that on the smallest amount of money you need. That's one piece of advice. I don't know if that applies to everything, but I've used that very successfully.
That's great. And you still do that today?
Yes.
Yeah. Tell us the whole concept of, everyone knows the value of incentivizing people. And, in my education company, we're an ESOP, so everyone owns the company. But many people are hesitant to do that at various stages. They don't see the value in it yet. You've done it from the very beginning. Just expound on that for a little bit, because I think it's so critical for people that want to grow their business beyond just being self-employed or having a small team of people if they're really going to grow.
Yeah. I don't know if you've seen this in life like I have, but if you go into a mom and pop shop and the mom or pop is behind the counter, you get a certain level of service. And if a hourly paid employee is behind the counter, you get a different level of service.
Yes.
And that's the difference between being an owner or not. And I always saw that in life. And I always thought, well, two things. One, I want people to feel like owners. I want them to act like that every day. But the other is, I think it will be a hollow victory if we have success as a company and I'm celebrating and I can't celebrate alongside everybody else who's on my team. And I was never on a sports team. Little league, but never like in high school or college on a sports team. And I was never in a play. And I watched my kids grow up, and they were in a play in high school, and there was such camaraderie because everybody was in it together. Everybody had everybody else's back. And I thought, God, I can't believe I missed out on that all my life. What a great experience. And I thought, oh, no, that's not true. I didn't miss out on that. That's what I do every day.
Yeah.
I try and build that same kind of team and camaraderie so we all feel like we're in this together. And I do that through equity. By giving everybody a stake, everybody feels, I want everybody, like even our receptionist in our building is going to celebrate when we have an IPO because they're going to make out really well and they feel alongside it. Different levels, obviously people are different levels, different contribution, but I want everybody to feel like they're together in it.
How important do you think it is to be generous in business deals? I know you do that. We've done it even in our business deals. I always try, if I negotiate a deal, to, after it's done, give something more than they expected. And because it builds a brand for you. People want to do business with you. But how important has that been in your career? And could you expound on some of the ways that you've done that in the past?
Well, it's important, again, in the exact same way that you go into a store and you see how you're treated when there's a non-owner behind the counter. I saw how I was treated in business deals on the other side when I felt shitty afterwards.
Yes.
And I just said, I don't want anybody I'm in business with ever feel that way on the other side.
Yes.
And one thing that I really try and do is, it's really challenging, but I've learned to do this in life now. When I'm selling someone with my full passion, I'm all out. And I'm so excited about it, I can't help it. But the last thing that I do before I close someone, I want to then also tell them all the downsides. Yes. I want them to enter into it really understanding that, okay, you're hearing my full passion, and that's what I believe. But that is not guaranteed to come true. And here are all the challenges we do have.
Yes.
And I really want people to enter into things really understanding that as well. And I just feel better about it because we're going to go through those dark times. That swamp's going to happen.
Yep.
And I want that person to never be mad at me that swamp happened.
Yes.
I want them to know that we're in this together.
You did a talk at, I think it was a TED or someplace like that I saw years ago, and you were describing, what are the simple, most important reasons why companies succeed versus fail. And you laid some of those elements out. You talked about the customer, you talked about the idea, the business model, the funding, the timing, some of the same things you did here, but you had a different sequence of those.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if you'd share with people, because you've got 40 years of experience now, what is most important, second, third, fourth, when you analyze your own businesses, the ones that made it versus didn't, because you've had 150 of them.
Yeah, well, I used to think the idea mattered the most, and that's definitely not true, because the idea is going to shift and change, and it could be wrong time and all that. Then I used to think the business model mattered the most, and that doesn't matter, because you can adapt your business model. In fact, you should change your business model with data. Then I used to think the amount of money you raise mattered the most, because you need that money to compete in the marketplace, but that doesn't matter. You can compete with a small budget. You have a clever product, or you have pull. Pull is what you need. And then I used to think execution mattered the most. I now think that timing and execution matter the most.
Timing and execution.
Yeah, because execution is how you change your mindset to overcome all those other things.
Yes.
And obviously.
And so team is a huge part of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So we're always trying to choose a team. Now, another thing I learned, which doesn't apply necessarily to you might all be running your own business. For me, because I've chosen to have an idea and find other leaders, I have to make the idea become theirs.
Yes.
I have to let the idea change and become theirs. I have to, it's my child at the beginning, but I have to let that child grow up and leave home, basically.
Yes.
And that's very hard for me, but I've learned how to do that. And at the beginning, I didn't want to do that.
Yes.
I wanted them to run my idea. That doesn't work.
Yes.
People have to run their idea. It has to become theirs.
Yeah. And as you can see, here's a man who's got a tremendous artist skill, right? His capacity to see the idea, create the idea, move the idea, but his capacity to bring the right team in, but also to see the right timing. How do you know if it's the right timing? Because that's the real juice, right? The whole thing. How do you find that?
Well, you have to be very honest. You have to look at the signals the world is telling you. Of course, you have the idea and you're so passionate about it, so that makes you think the timing is right.
Yes.
But you have to look at